Greetings, everyone. It's wonderful to see you once more. I have an engaging and novel tale for you. Ready? Let's dive in. She spoke without glancing up from her phone, neither irritated nor defensive, just calm and efficient. She stated that affection didn't vanish but required scheduling. She suggested we schedule it like any other event. She compared it to discussing flights, deadlines, or dinners with donors. It seemed she was sharing an update, not closing a chapter. I nodded, even smiled. I agreed because the room was silent and I didn't wish to create an awkward atmosphere. She resumed scrolling on her phone. The moment transpired smoothly, like a task accomplished. Later that evening, I opened the shared calendar on my laptop in the dimly lit kitchen. The screen emitted a soft blue glow. There were meetings, site visits, dinners labeled with surnames, a charity breakfast, a late reception. Her days were meticulously scheduled, each minute accounted for. Cursor moved over an empty evening slot, adding a tentative plan labeled Time Together. It was titled sparsely. The entry lingered for less than an hour before a respectful message popped up while I was cleaning my teeth. The plan had been rejected. The note mentioned low energy and suggested rescheduling. No regret, no strain, just a simple withdrawal. Next morning, she pecked my cheek as people do when they're almost gone. She picked up her coat, reminded me about a weekend event, and promised to share details once confirmed. I saw her leave from the reflection in the hallway mirror, her footsteps steady, her demeanor loose. At work, phone vibrated again, another calendar update. A dinner was added to her schedule, same evening, different location. I neither agreed nor declined, I just kept my availability blank. This moment signified a shift in my status, not due to an argument, not due to distance. Through a system adjustment, my approval hadn't been granted. Our system wasn't chilly because it functioned effectively. Every workday commenced uniformly. I was up before dawn, coffee percolating as the city remained silent. By the time she descended, dressed and engrossed in her phone, our household was operational. Lights illuminated, thermostat regulated. The garage door opened on schedule. She never needed to query if tasks were accomplished. They always were. My domain was my office, where the warehouse floor operated like a clockwork mechanism. Trucks arrived, containers shifted, issues arose and vanished before superiors noticed. As chief operating officer, my role wasn't about visibility, it was about consistency. When there were no interruptions, no one questioned who maintained order. Hers was the polar opposite, evenings filled with venues rather than loading bays, glossy rooms, badges adorned with names. She navigated through those locales effortlessly, adjusting her smiles based on whom she encountered. Occasionally, I would encounter her at that spot, having just stepped off work with my sleeves unfurled and tie unknotted. This setup appealed to others, appreciating the contrast. For many years, this arrangement thrived without exchange of words. I maintained my position where tranquility was required while she ruled where visibility reigned. Our marriage neatly fitted within that division. Upon her late arrivals, supper would be ready. During my business trips for audits, she filled the void with activity. Neither of us voiced doubts. Our routine was a testament to this pattern. Her days were brimming with action. Mine were left vacant intentionally. If an issue required attention, I'd make room. Availability wasn't set in stone, it was understood. It wasn't scheduled, it was assumed. In the evenings, once she disconnected, she'd place her phone on the counter and lean against it as if time had been paused. I would already be there, engrossed in reading or completing paperwork. She never sought my availability. She didn't need to. Everything changed when the calendar ceased reflecting our logic and instead became a barrier. Remained unaware on the incorrect side, unmindful of rule alterations. The calendar remained silent, merely responding. Attempted re-entry a few days hence, late Sunday afternoon, when house silence prevailed and she was still in sweatpants, laptop active at the kitchen island. Remained mute, made another entry with identical title but different time. The slot appeared vacant upon saving. Persisted longer this occasion, nearly an entire day. Mid-morning workday, my phone vibrated. Entry repositioned, not erased, pushed forward by a week. A succinct, impartial note followed stating the week was unusually busy and it would be prudent to plan accordingly. Locked screen returned to warehouse floor. By the time I revisited, the slot had vanished entirely. In its stead, something new emerged. Her evenings filled swifter than before, suppers labeled as work, events without venue specified yet. A name surfaced, more frequently Michael. Occasionally accompanied by the term investor. Alternatively not. The blocks encompassing his name were extended, secure. At home, there was no significant shift. She still inquired about my day while reheating leftovers, still mentioned forthcoming trips while loading the dishwasher, still greeted me with a quick and concise kiss before bed, much like an end punctuation mark. However, the routine persisted. Whenever I suggested a plan, the calendar resisted. When she didn't, the days moved ahead unaltered. Cancellations arrived promptly, always presented as logistics, never emotions. There was always a rationale and never a dialogue. One evening, I observed her scheduling a dinner while standing next to me on the couch. She did not attempt to conceal the screen. She didn't need to. The time coincided with a slot I had previously attempted to book and failed. She closed the app, reclined, and inquired if I would be available the following weekend for an event she might require assistance at. I replied that I would review my schedule. For the first time, I uttered those words sincerely. The calendar continued to function, but not for me. The termination arrived prematurely that evening. The calendar alert popped up while I was still at work, near the loading dock with my coat slung over a shoulder. The entry we had arranged days prior vanished with the same impersonal language as before. Low energy. Long day. It seemed prudent to rest. I closed the app and navigated home through traffic that crawled sluggishly despite the silence on my phone. The house was dark upon arrival. A solitary lamp illuminated the living room. Her shoes by the door were missing. A note on the counter stated she had opted to attend a brief charity event she hadn't initially planned on. The message was delicate, nearly apologetic, as if an afterthought. I warmed up dinner and ate it alone at the island. Midway through, my phone illuminated with an unexpected notification. A tale from a local foundation she frequently followed appeared on my screen. I clicked on it instinctively. She stood in a room bathed in warm, light glass walls behind her, the city glimmering beyond. Dressed for donors, she was both relaxed and meticulous. Michael stood next to her, close enough their shoulders nearly touched without touching. They didn't cling, they didn't need to. Their bodies leaned subtly towards each other as if they had previously decided on the space between them. A photo was snapped from the side. She chuckled at something he said, head slightly tilted, her hand momentarily on his arm. The scene shifted, replaced by clapping and a logo. I placed my phone on the counter and continued eating. Later, I loaded the dishwasher and wiped down the surface. When she returned, hours after the event's cancellation, she moved softly to avoid waking me. Her phone buzzed once before she muted it. In the morning, her schedule showed rest. The previous evening had been filled with engagements. The invitations began arriving quietly. She casually brought up previous week events, often during shared kitchen tasks. She'd propose a dinner, a project walkthrough, or a small gathering related to the project. Her phrasing was strategic. She didn't express a wish for my presence, but stated it would aid. Invitations quickly followed these conversations, and calendar entries with tentative labels marked pending appeared. Each invitation came accompanied by an explanation emphasizing the importance of stability to investors, the reassurance provided by familiar faces, and the effectiveness of my presence over talking points. She presented it as a tested strategy, something we had used successfully in the past. On my first return, the room responded before she did. Smiles broadened, hands reached for mine with recognition, and someone commented on our unity. That night, she stood closer to me, aligning our bodies according to photographers' preferences. Michael was present, moving about with ease and nonchalance. I remained throughout the entire event. I responded appropriately when spoken to. I departed at the right moment. On my way home, she thanked me and scheduled another engagement while I was still driving. This became the routine. My private time at home wasn't questioned. Instead, I was scheduled for public appearances. My availability mattered only when it served an image. When it didn't, it was managed. One afternoon, she inquired if I could shift a business trip due to an unexpected donor dinner. She mentioned it casually, already expecting my compliance. I watched as she added the event before I responded, certain that the calendar would adjust. I didn't contest her. I didn't argue. I simply confirmed nothing. For the first time, an invitation remained unanswered long enough for her to take notice. I stopped responding instinctively. The next invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was overseeing the warehouse. A reception, happening in the early evening, marked as significant. The calendar block remained idle. I chose not to interact with it during my inspection, endorsed a delayed delivery, and departed without glancing at my phone. She observed this that evening. Not instantly, not overtly. Our conversation flowed with casual chit-chat and practical matters. She brought up travel plans. I mentioned a personnel shift. At a certain point, she glanced at her device, slightly furrowing her brow before placing it face down. She didn't inquire about the invite. She didn't have to. Normally, such issues would resolve themselves. The reminder arrived the following afternoon. Identical event. Consistent tone. A subsequent message asking for specifics. During a meeting, I allowed it to lapse. Upon rechecking, the block was still unaddressed. That was unusual. By the week's end, there were 3 unanswered inquiries, different locations, same intention. Each one lingered longer than its predecessor. No cancellations, no alterations. Just voids where confirmations had previously been. At home, she began arranging for events without consulting me. She spread outfits on the bed and took calls elsewhere. One time, she halted at the door and inquired if I would be accompanying her that evening. The query felt more like an inquiry than an invitation. I mentioned I hadn't scheduled it. She resent it while still standing there. I declined to open it. She left on her own. The door closed quietly. A message arrived later stating the event had gone smoothly, but something was amiss. I read it past midnight and remained unresponsive. The following day, I observed alterations in her calendar. Previously empty slots were now marked as tentative. The first event I missed wasn't conveyed as an absence. Rather, it appeared as perplexity. I recognized the date because the house felt different that morning. She dressed earlier than normal, moving methodically, arranging accessories in a systematic order indicative of photography. She didn't ask if I would attend. Nor did she send another reminder. She expected no intervention would be necessary. However, by mid-afternoon, a pile of messages accumulated. They included clothing requests, organization matters, inquiries about a venue, and arrangements for seating. Despite this, she remained at work until the lights inside the warehouse switched to night mode, then drove home without responding to any of it. Pictures from the event were already online before her return. The room was recognizable. It bore the same branding and familiar faces, but the layout was incorrect. In every image where she usually stood next to him, there was emptiness. In one wide shot, Michael took that space without hesitation, facing her, his hand resting lightly on her back as they addressed a group of donors. No warning was given. No adjustment period was allowed. Instead, there was an overlap. She returned home late. Her shoes lingered by the door for longer than usual. She drank water and stood rigidly at the counter, scrolling through messages. She didn't discuss the event, nor did she inquire about my whereabouts. The following morning, my phone vibrated with a message from someone I barely knew. Was everything steady? Not concerning me or my well-being, stable. Over breakfast, she scheduled another appointment on the calendar without giving it a second thought, and this time it included Michael from the outset. Not as a substitute, as an addition. I observed as the arrangement solidified. What had once been unnoticeable was now apparent, not as a betrayal, as a shift. I didn't disclose anything. The initial alteration occurred on paper. During lunch, I established a new checking account, signed the digital documents, and diverted my paycheck before the week expired. That evening, I transferred utility access to her email and deleted myself from the autopay list without comment. The house remained unchanged in its function. That was the intention. A few days passed, and I reserved a temporary apartment near my workplace. No preview tour, no debate. I selected a unit facing the parking garage, digitally signed and arranged for key collection on a Friday afternoon when I knew she'd be away. I packed in layers instead of boxes, gradually emptying drawers, with coats disappearing from the hallway closet and toiletries leaving the bathroom one item at a time. The guest room filled up subtly, then emptied again. Nothing seemed out of place to set off an alarm. She noticed changes as she would notice calendar alterations, late, indirectly, on one specific evening. She inquired about my passport's location and mentioned the garage feeling less congested on another occasion. I responded by claiming I had reorganized, which proved sufficient. The remaining items were documents that followed, my mailing address was updated, insurance beneficiaries adjusted, and my name removed from event contact lists she had shared access to for years. Each confirmation was received in a matter-of-fact manner, devoid of emotion, and marked as complete. My work laptop was the final item I moved before departing our home on a Saturday morning while she was already at the airport. My car's driveway camera captured my departure, moving at a standard pace without any delay. I hadn't deactivated it unnecessarily. By the time she arrived, the system displayed a revised plan, not vacant but rearranged. She found out the facts from documents, not from me. The first message popped up during a meeting, a snapshot of an unwanted bank alert. A concise query about account irregularities followed. I chose not to respond. By the time I exited the office, there were 2 additional messages. One concerning utilities, another regarding a notification from the insurance portal that only bore her name. Upon reaching home to the apartment, a waiting courier envelope held documents I'd already signed several days prior. Change of address forms, updated coverage details, and a concise summary sheet with effective dates were inside. No accompanying note was attached. Her call came that evening. I let it ring until it ceased on its own. The next day, an email emerged from a travel coordinator I hadn't communicated with personally. It seems it was sent unintentionally or carelessly. Two itineraries were attached, listing the same cities and dates but different hotels, one in her name, one in Michael's. Later in the afternoon, another file appeared in my inbox from a shared cloud folder that hadn't been cleaned out. This time it contained expense reports, dinners billed as strategic meetings, and receipts corresponding to nights she'd called off at home. The timestamps coincided perfectly. She didn't refute anything, neither did she clarify. Her messages switched tones, suggesting a conversation was needed. She stated there had been confusion. She implied things appeared more severe on paper than they were in reality. I left the emails unopened and archived them. By nightfall, her calendar turned private, not empty. The system didn't break down. It revealed itself. The event took place on a Thursday evening in a symmetrical room, which I recognized because I had walked through it with her months ago. Assessing sightlines, managing circulation, ensuring uninterrupted movement for two individuals. The lighting scheme adhered to this layout. Two focused light zones on stage center, two microphones, two names absent from the final program draft. I later viewed the live stream from my apartment, with sound at a minimal level and laptop perched on the kitchen countertop. She walked onto the stage singularly. The pre-applause silence extended past its customary length, not theatrically prolonged, simply conspicuous. She grinned, settled herself slightly off-center, correcting her position upon recognizing there was no one else making similar adjustments. Michael occupied the first row, focused, hands folded, embodying support in the right place, neither beside nor equal. The queries emerged from the audience in their usual sequence, concerning timelines, consistency, leadership. One spectator asked about the durability of the partnership amid expansion. She responded fluidly, referring to the team, the vision, and the upcoming stage. She never mentioned my name. The vacant space remained noticeable throughout, not lost but an absence that was acknowledged too late. When the presentation concluded, people rose and clapped politely, moderate. Conversations commenced promptly, shifting focus elsewhere. She descended and blended into movements no longer revolving around her. I closed the laptop prior to the camera panning away. The following morning, my calendar was vacant by design. No pending invitations, no tentative reservations. I departed for work without glancing at my phone and returned to a place that didn't anticipate my arrival. No one inquired about my absence. They adapted. I wasn't abandoned. I was erased from a system that had already prepared to operate without me. And I didn't re-engage. Thank you for listening to the story till the end. Please share your thoughts below. Subscribe. More unspoken tales are on the way.